Hey, Dr. CJ. My name is Elvis, and my topic is Latino men and mental health. And for my stakeholders, I interviewed three therapists who work with the Latino community, and all of them are based in LA. So I want to start off with Cynthia Cerito, and her focus is mainly on marriage and family therapy. And she has a page called Corazón y Aire, and she's been working with the Latino community for over 11 years now. So something that I want to highlight during our interview was that she said that many older generation, older generation male, older generations uphold many traditional beliefs, which plays against them expressing their emotions. Many of them have that belief or that notion of you have to be strong. A man has to be strong. A man has to be can't show any sign of of feelings, and that could play against their um, them reaching out for help or actually just even talking about their their emotions. And the reason why reason why this was critical, because she mentioned how many of them believe that they could jeopardize their manhood, that they could be seen as weak, they could be seen as crazy, and no man wants to be portrayed as that. So they just fight their, how can I say, fight their battles in silence, you could say. And I also want to share how, like, another issue that she referred to was that many of them don't know what are signs of depression, what are signs of anxiety, what are the signs of of something that's related to the mental health. And she mentioned how, like, many of them are intimidated to receive professional help, so that's another issue. But I think these two go hand in hand, because by not talking to a doctor or not knowing, like, what are the symptoms of depression, they might associate to something else, or maybe another health issue, related issue, and they just go around circles and they never get the help they need. And many of them don't go for to a professional because, like, they're intimidated. So they tend to um how can I explain it? They tend to um have longer effects with their mental health because they don't go out and receive that help they need. I think this was a very good interview. And another thing that I want to refer to that she mentioned was that I asked her, like, what are some ways that we could, as a Latino, in the Latino community, we could help spread the word, or change these stigmas of not getting help. And she said that we're doing a good job, we're improving little by little. And she said that the reason why we're improving is because young people are breaking those barriers of not speaking out, or not, like, making things aware. um, and she said that we're paving younger generations paving way to in the community because of social media. Social media is helping a lot because we could share links, we could share posts about mental health, we could share any therapists that we recommend, all these little notions. We could also share a message, all these, like, little how can I say, posts, I guess you could say, have a long impact, have like a ripple impact. So, like, if I shared a post and then my friend shares it, and their friend sees it, and then one of her friends might might repost whatever I put up or she put up, then it could be shared and a lot of people view it, so that's a very good way to make the no makes sorry that's a good way to spread the word about getting help, and it's not a bad thing to get help. And now I want to jump into my second person, which is Dr. Leslie Celis, and she focuses mainly on depression and depression, stress, and trauma. And one of the things that I asked her was, like, how does as her years of experience, or how does she see the Latino community getting help? And she said that people are talking about mental health more than before, and something that helped spread the word was, again, social media. But she said, like, one of the issues that Latino community have is that there's an internal pressure, especially in men, about how to be like being strong. And she said that it's many of the times it's unrealistic because everybody feels um every emotion, you know. Sometimes we feel sad, we feel happy, we feel angry, all these type of emotions, but it's how we cope with them and how we deal with them, you know. If someone's sad, like, you know, talking to a friend could help out and it could just release the, you know, the sadness, you could say. But if you keep it bottled up, it could keep growing and growing and growing until it gets to a point where it could actually affect your health. And I think, and she mentioned how that's very critical to change, because many men don't like to opening up because it's against the cultural norms, you could say, or values. So that's one of the things that she mentioned, how we need to change. One of the things that in the Latino community we need to change. And I think that was very interesting that she referred to was how parents interact with their children. And I think that was very interesting because she said that children at a young age are taught to fulfill these gender roles at a young age or in a young stage of their life. For example, was that I shared was how my aunt would tell my little cousin, he's like probably like 3 or 4, sorry, and he will cry sometimes, and she would tell them like, boys don't cry, or you can't be playing with certain toys, you know. And these she might not notice, but as my little cousin will grow up, and she will keep telling him like how like boys don't cry, boys need like man up type of thing. Those little phrases have a big impact on how they portray or they express their feelings, because as they grow older, they're gonna be they learn that men can express their emotions because that's how their mom raised them. And she shared that many of the times parents don't know this, because this is very interesting. So she said like many of the times parents don't know the impact they have in their words have in their children's life. And she said that parents sometimes don't realize the effect that their words influence of the upbringing of the children, and they just fulfill these norms. So they say, for the example that we gave was how my aunt learned these phrases, or learned how to tell my little cousin, men don't cry, men can, like, you know, you have to man up. She learned it from her, you know, her parents, grandparents, you know, and so forth and so forth. It's been a traditional, or it's like it's been passed down to generations, these phrases. And they might not think they have a big impact, but it does have a big impact in how children are raised and how it could affect them in the long term. So um as well, something that she did mention was this notion of machismo. um Man, like I said, like, again, going back to the same concept that the reality or the expectations of man, of how to be a man, or the what's the norms of being a man, is unrealistic, because, you know, at some point everybody feels like certain emotions, like I mentioned. And one of the solution is we have to break these stereotypes, so we could so men could feel that capability, or the ability to just open up and not feel judged, to just feel, you know, feel safe and talking about their feelings. And the last person I want to share about, I want to say it's the best interviewed, was a therapist named Ricardo Peña. And he has over 20 years of experience working with the Latino community, and the in Los Angeles. He actually grew up, I think, in East LA, if I'm mistaken. And I really enjoyed this interview because it came from a male therapist. And I'm not saying it to be sexist or anything, but when I was reaching out to a Latino therapist, it was I didn't know, like, I didn't realize how critical this was, but many of them were females, and he was the only male that I found. Like, I emailed like probably like 20 15 therapists, and he was the only male. And he mentioned that there's a lack of Latino male in that field, which was very interesting because I couldn't find any Latino men that's related to this topic, you know. And I asked him like, what are some challenges he thinks that that men face in our community. And he said, same thing, stigma, being called local, crazy, sorry, and they prefer, like, again, prefer getting help from a friend than a professional. And he said, like, the thing that I really liked about our interview was that he said that when he was growing up, he went to therapy, and he said that many of the times there were white folks, and he said that many of the times that he would share his story, he would see a friend passed away, and he would get help, and he's like, I'm dealing with this, this is how I feel. And the therapist will be surprised. He's like, oh wow, I don't, he couldn't relate to a story. And he would tell him, I think the therapist would tell him, I think the best solution for you is to, like, get out of that area. And he questioned it because he was like, okay, why I could get out of the area, but what about my friends? What about my cousins? What about my family? That everybody that lives in that community, they're going through the same thing. They're going through the same they're living the same experience that I am, you know? And he said that if you tell me to leave, the problem's still there. And what about all these people that, that need the help as well? And he said that there was a lack of people that could just relate to him. And he was saying that many of the times when he would go to therapy, um, he would share his stories, and the therapist would be fascinated with his stories, and it would be like him talking more and him talking about, like, the violence that he lived than him receiving help. Another thing that he said that was very, like, very powerful was that men in these communities, like low income communities, they're tough. They act tough. They need to be tough, not uh, because of, the values, the cultural stigmas, but also because of where they live. Because of, like, he said, they and I quote, um mm, oh, I can't find a quote, but he said that many men um are tough for survival, not because they have to, but well, not because they want to, because they have to. If they're seen weak in the community, if they're seen like, hey, he's not tough enough, he's gonna get punked on, he's gonna get bullied, so no man wants to get bullied, especially if they have family. No one man wants to be looked as weak, especially in a community that's full of violence. That was pretty very powerful. Another thing he said, that we need in the Latino community, they need to be more male therapists, or just people to talk to, because he said that many of the times, actually, men, like, when they talk to a female, they don't want to be portrayed as weak. They don't want for them to think that they don't want the therapist to think they're weak if it's a female. So sometimes they don't open up as much as if it was a man-to-man conversation. So that was pretty interesting. And as well, another thing that he mentioned was that, oh, he shared how when he started off his career, um, he volunteered at this organization where they would their focus was on, like, a family member passing away or something like that. And he said that many of the times their colleagues would only focus on the mother, the children, and that's it. And if the father or the male, like older male figure, they'll be like, oh, are you doing okay? Yeah, okay, that's fine, and that's it. But he was like, he was that he was taking a step back, because he was like, wait, how do you know, just because he said I'm fine, how do you know he's not hurting inside? And he said, like, we have to change the notion of receiving mental health. He said that men will receive, will go out and receive help if we just change the like, I guess the title of it says again, like, go receive help for your mental health. He will be like, hey, homies hangout, or like friends hangout group. These, like, different phrases could help them a lot. Could be like, okay, I'm just gonna go hang out with my friends. And reality, going hang out with their friends means going talk about their emotions. And he was saying that he would say, like, he would tell the men who would have a lost one, who men who lost a family member, and he'll be like, hey, let's go hang out, let's go grab a coffee, or let's walk around. And they will agree to it, and they'll walk, and it will, like, be a casual conversation, but during that conversation he will slide, some, like, like questions about like, oh, how you feeling and how you coping with this, and sometimes they'll cry, you know, and it wasn't, and he knows he knows where they're coming from. He didn't judge him. He was like, you know what, homie, like this is, he talked to more as a friend. That's what he mentioned, and that helped him a lot. That helps a lot of men because they don't want to be, they don't want to see, they don't want to see, I guess they don't see it when it's like when they're talking to him as a friend type of thing. They don't see it as professional and a patient type of thing. It's more like a friend, which they could open up more. So that's pretty much it, Dr. CJ. Thank you for listening. Have a good one.